Hello and welcome to IAMC Radio and Podcast. Today on Understanding Our History, we're exploring the administrations and developments in Nigeria, from pre-colonial times through to independence in 1960. You know, it's fascinating to think about how Nigeria's history is often portrayed as starting with colonialism.
Right.
But there's so much more to the story.
Absolutely.
There's a rich history before that.
Yeah, before British influence, Nigeria had a rich and diverse tapestry of governance systems. It wasn't a monolithic entity at all.
No, it's like looking at a mosaic, right? Each piece is unique.
Yeah.
Contributing to this larger, intricate picture. And we have sources that highlight everything from feudal systems in the north to these powerful kingdoms in the east and west.
And what's interesting is that those systems weren't just abstract concepts, they had real impact.
Yeah.
Take the House Estates, for example, with their established fiscal systems and judiciaries.
Wow.
All centuries ago.
That's incredible. So they had systems for managing finances.
Yeah.
And upholding justice, much like we do today.
Yeah.
It really challenges any assumptions that pre-colonial societies were somehow less sophisticated.
Exactly. And then you have the Kanuri dynasty in Bornu, and these powerful kingships in places like Opobo and Onitsha, each with their own unique ways of governing and exerting authority.
It makes you wonder, how did these diverse systems influence the government Nigeria adopted after independence? Was it a kind of break, or did echoes of the past linger?
That's a great question, and it's something historians continue to debate.
Right.
What we do know is that those pre-colonial structures definitely laid a foundation.
Yeah.
They shaped the political landscape in ways that are still felt today.
It's like building a house, right? You might demolish the old structure, but the foundation remains,
Yeah,
influencing the shape and stability of whatever comes next.
a perfect analogy. And we can't forget the influence of Islamic law and traditions, particularly in the north.
Yeah.
They played a major role in shaping governance and social norms.
It adds another layer of complexity to the picture, doesn't it? This blend of traditional systems and religious influences.
Absolutely. And speaking of fascinating pre-colonial figures, our sources mention the Long Juju of Arbochukwu,
An oracle.
with significant political and economic influence.
That's intriguing. What kind of power did this oracle wield?
Well, imagine a figure who could pronounce judgments on people, their pronouncements seen as divine will. The Long Juju held that kind of authority,
Wow.
influencing everything from local disputes to trade networks.
It's almost like a spiritual court, with judgments carrying real-world consequences.
Exactly, and it highlights how spiritual figures often played a pivotal role in pre-colonial life, shaping power dynamics in ways that we might not always recognize.
It makes you realize that history is full of surprises, right? These unexpected figures and forces
Absolutely.
that have shaped the world we live in.
And as we move into the 19th century, we encounter another pivotal event, the Fulani Jihad. This religious war starting in 1804 dramatically reshaped the power balance in the north.
The Fulani Jihad. It's a term I've heard before, but honestly, I don't know much about it. What were the motivations behind this conflict? Was it solely about religion?
That's a question historians continue to grapple with. Was it a genuine movement for religious purification, or was there a more strategic power play at work?
So there are different interpretations of the event. That makes it even more interesting. What are some of the key arguments on each side?
Well, some historians emphasize the religious fervor of the movement, pointing to the Fulani's desire to reform Islamic practices and establish a more righteous society.
So they saw it as a genuine effort to align society with their interpretation of faith.
Precisely. But other historians argue that religious motivations were intertwined with more worldly ambitions. They suggest the jihad was a cleverly disguised plot to install the Fulani in positions of power.
So a power grab disguised as a religious movement, that's a bold claim. What evidence did they use to support that interpretation?
They point to the strategic alliances the Fulani forged, their military prowess, and the way they consolidated power once they were victorious. They argue that it was a carefully orchestrated campaign, with religious rhetoric serving as a powerful tool.
It makes you wonder about the complexities of historical events, right? How motives can be layered with multiple factors at play.
Absolutely, and the implications of each interpretation are significant. For understanding how the North evolved, did the Fulani genuinely seek religious reform? Or were they primarily driven by political ambitions? These questions continue to shape our understanding of this period.
It's like solving a historical puzzle, piecing together the different perspectives and evidence to get a clearer picture.
Exactly. And regardless of the motivations behind it, the outcome of the jihad was undeniable. By 1810, the Fulani had established rule over the House Estates, permanently altering the political landscape of the North.
It's a stark reminder of how events in the past can have lasting consequences, shaping the course of history for generations to come.
And as we'll see, the Fulani Jihad played a significant role in how the North interacted with the growing British influence in the region.
Okay.
But that's a story for another time.
I'm already hooked. But before we delve into the British arrival, I want to shift gears for a moment and explore a tale of mystery and adventure.
Okay.
The European exploration of the Niger River.
Ah, the Niger. A river that captivated the imaginations of explorers for centuries, until the late 18th century. Its source, course, and outlet were all shrouded in mystery.
It's like something out of an adventure novel, right?
Yeah.
This legendary river, rumored to flow through a golden interior.
Exactly.
Filled with riches beyond imagination.
Rumors of cities like Timbuktu overflowing with wealth fueled the fascination.
Wow.
And a group called the African Association was determined to uncover the truth, to map the Niger and unlock its secrets.
It's amazing to think of these explorers, venturing into the unknown, driven by curiosity and the allure of discovery.
And one of the most intrepid of these explorers was Mungo Park, a young Scotsman who embodied the spirit of adventure. In 1796, after enduring incredible hardships, he became the first European to see the Niger.
Wow, 1796.
Yeah.
Think of the challenges he must have faced. No GPS, limited maps, and the dangers of traveling through uncharted territories.
It's mind-boggling, isn't it? Park's journals paint a vivid picture of his journey. He faced starvation, imprisonment, disease, and countless other dangers.
Wow.
Yet he persevered, driven by a thirst for knowledge and a determination to succeed.
It makes you realize the incredible resilience of these explorers. They were facing challenges we can hardly fathom today.
Absolutely, and Park's story is both inspiring and tragic. While his first expedition was a success, his second in 1805 took a darker turn.
What happened?
Well, Park set off down the Niger, determined to chart its course to the sea, but conflicting accounts surround his fate. Some say he drowned at the Busa Rapids. Others believe he was killed by locals. The exact circumstances remain a mystery to this day.
So even in his demise, the Niger retained its mystique. It's a reminder of the risks these explorers took, the dangers that lurked around every bend.
Park's disappearance only added to the legend of the Niger, and his legacy inspired countless others to follow in his footsteps, to continue the quest to map this enigmatic river.
It's fascinating how one person's story can spark such a wave of exploration. It's like a torch being passed from one generation to the next.
And after Park's death, the focus of exploration shifted. Instead of venturing inland from the West African coast, expeditions began focusing on traveling south from the north.
Across the Sahara.
Across the vast Sahara Desert.
That's an entirely different set of challenges. I can't even imagine attempting that journey in the early 19th century.
It was an incredibly arduous undertaking. Imagine braving scorching heat-limited water supplies and navigating a landscape that seemed to stretch endlessly.
It speaks volumes about their determination and resilience. What were they hoping to achieve by approaching the Niger from the north?
They were hoping to circumvent the dangers that had claimed Park's life, and to gain a better understanding of the river's upper reaches, its source, and its tributaries.
So they were trying to fill in the gaps in the map to create a more complete picture of this complex river system.
Exactly. And in 1820, an expedition led by Denham, Clapperton, and Odney set off on this ambitious journey. They braved the Sahara and reached the shores of Lake Chad.
Lake Chad.
A landmark achievement in itself.
That's incredible. What was it like for them to reach this destination after such a grueling journey?
Imagine the sense of accomplishment, but also the realization that their journey was far from over.
Yeah.
Lake Chad was just one piece of the puzzle.
And did they encounter any local populations during their travels? How were they received?
Upon reaching Lake Chad, they were received by the Sultan of Bornu, a powerful figure in the region. He became a key figure in their explorations, providing them with information and support.
It highlights the importance of diplomacy and cultural exchange in these early explorations. They weren't just venturing into uncharted territory, they were interacting with established societies and power structures.
And these interactions weren't always straightforward. Denham, for instance, participated in slave raiding expeditions with the Bornu army.
That's a stark reminder of the complexities of this period. Here we have explorers seeking knowledge, yet entangled in the brutal realities of the slave trade.
It forces us to confront the ethical dilemmas of exploration. Were these explorers simply observers? Or were they complicit in the systems they encountered? These are questions that continue to spark debate.
It's a reminder that history isn't always black and white. There are often shades of gray,
Precisely.
moral ambiguities that we have to wrestle with.
And while Denham was gathering insights into the military capabilities of the Borneo Empire, his colleague Clapperton set off on a journey westward from Lake Chad.
Where was Clapperton headed?
He was determined to reach the influential cities of Kano and Sokoto, which were key centers of trade and Islamic learning. His journey took him through the heart of the House estates, providing valuable information about their culture and governance.
So they were dividing and conquering in a sense, each explorer focusing on a different aspect of this vast and complex region.
And Clapperton's encounters with figures like Sultan Bello of Sokoto provided crucial insights into the power dynamics of the House estates. He was gathering knowledge that would eventually influence British colonial strategies.
It's fascinating how these early explorations, driven by a thirst for knowledge, ultimately paved the way for colonialism.
Very insightful observations, like an unintended consequence of their curiosity.
Right.
And sadly, this expedition was also marked by loss. Several members of the team, including Odney Toole and Tyrwhitt, met tragic ends during their travels.
Oh.
It highlights the risks inherent in these early expeditions, the constant dangers they faced.
It's a reminder that exploration, while driven by noble goals, often came at a heavy price. These individuals were putting their lives on the line.
Absolutely.
To expand our understanding of the world.
And Clapperton, despite the loss of his companions, remained determined to solve the mystery of the Niger's course. He embarked on a second expedition in 1825, this time attempting to reach Sokoto from the Bight of Benin.
So he was approaching the Niger from a different angle, hoping to connect the dots, so to speak.
Precisely. But tragedy struck again. His companions Pierce and Morrison succumbed to fever, and Clapperton himself met his end in Sokoto, his mission unfulfilled.
It's heartbreaking to think of these individuals, driven by such passion and curiosity, ultimately succumbing to the harsh realities of their time.
Their sacrifices weren't in vain, though. Their efforts paved the way for others to continue the quest. And one individual who emerged from these tragedies to play a pivotal role was Richard Lander, Clapperton's servant.
Clapperton's servant? That's an interesting twist. Tell me more about Richard Lander and his role in this story.
Lander's story is one of perseverance and loyalty, a testament to how even those in the background can rise to extraordinary challenges. After Clapperton's death, Lander returned to the coast with his master's papers, a journey that sparked his own desire to solve the Niger mystery.
So he was inspired by Clapperton's legacy, determined to carry on his work.
Exactly. Lander felt a deep sense of responsibility to complete what Clapperton had started. And in 1830, he embarked on an expedition with his brother John, a journey that would finally reveal the Niger's secrets to the world.
Okay, I need to hear more about this. What happened on this expedition? Were they successful?
Their journey is a tale of incredible courage, determination, and a bit of luck. They traveled to Bussa, the site of Park's disappearance, and from there they achieved the unthinkable. They successfully navigated the Niger to the Atlantic Ocean.
Wow, they finally solved the mystery. That had captivated explorers for centuries. What a moment that must have been.
It was a triumph of human ingenuity and perseverance. They faced countless obstacles, navigating treacherous waters, hostile territories, and the ever-present threat of disease. But they never gave up.
It's a testament to the power of human curiosity and the enduring desire to explore the unknown.
Absolutely.
Their discovery marked a turning point in our understanding of Africa, revealing the true course of this iconic river.
And while the Landers rightly deserve credit for their achievement, we shouldn't overlook the contribution of another individual, James McQueen.
James McQueen.
Who was he? McQueen was a theorist who never even set foot in Africa, yet he correctly predicted the Niger's delta outlet years before the Lander brothers expedition.
How did he do that? Was he some kind of psychic?
Not quite. McQueen was a brilliant analyst who pieced together information from diverse sources. He studied maps, travelers' accounts, and most importantly, he interviewed slaves in the West Indies, who then brought from the Niger region.
So he was listening to voices that were often ignored, gathering insights from those who had firsthand knowledge of the river.
Exactly. McQueen's success underscores the importance of considering multiple perspectives and valuing knowledge from unexpected sources. His story is a reminder that sometimes the most valuable insights come from those who are marginalized and overlooked.
It's a powerful lesson that's still relevant today, isn't it?
Absolutely.
The importance of seeking out diverse voices and challenging our assumptions.
And as we transition to discussing British colonial rule in Nigeria, McQueen's story serves as a reminder that we should always be open to challenging conventional wisdom and seeking out alternative perspectives.
That's a great point. But before we dive into the complexities of colonialism, I think we need a quick break. We've covered a lot of ground already, and I want to give our listeners a chance to process all this fascinating information.
A wise decision. We'll be back soon to explore the next chapter in Nigeria's journey. Welcome back to Understanding Our History. Before the break, we're discussing the incredible journeys of European explorers who were determined to map the Niger River.
It's amazing to think about what they accomplished, facing those incredible challenges and risks.
And their efforts, while driven by curiosity, ultimately laid the groundwork for a new era in Nigeria's history, the era of British colonialism.
That's a complex and often challenging topic to discuss. How do we even begin to unpack the legacy of British rule in Nigeria?
It's important to approach it with nuance, recognizing both the positive and negative aspects.
Yeah.
It's not about making simplistic judgments, but rather understanding the complexities of this period.
So let's start with the basics. When did British involvement in Nigeria really begin to solidify?
Well, we can trace it back to the late 19th century with the Berlin Conference of 1884-1885. This conference, attended by European powers, essentially carved up Africa, dividing it into spheres of influence.
So they were essentially drawing lines on a map, deciding who would control what.
Essentially, yes. And for Nigeria, this meant falling under British control. But establishing control on the ground was a different matter.
Right, they couldn't just draw lines on a map.
Yeah.
And expect everything to fall in line. How do they actually assert their authority?
It was a gradual process, involving military expeditions, treaties with local rulers, and the establishment of administrative structures.
And one of the key strategies they employed was indirect rule. Right. We touched on this earlier, but I'd love to delve a bit deeper.
Absolutely. Indirect rule was a cornerstone of British colonial administration in Nigeria. Instead of imposing a completely new system of governance, they sought to rule through existing traditional structures.
So they were working with local chiefs and rulers, using their authority to maintain order and enforce British policies.
Precisely. It was seen as a more pragmatic and cost-effective approach than trying to govern directly.
Right.
But it also had its critics.
I can imagine. It seems like it could easily reinforce existing power imbalances.
Yeah.
And potentially create resentment among those who felt marginalized.
Those are valid points. And those criticisms were certainly voiced at the time. Some argued that indirect rules simply propped up corrupt or oppressive traditional rulers, while others felt it stifled the development of modern political institutions.
So it was a system with both benefits and drawbacks. Its legacy is still debated today.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that indirect rule wasn't static. It evolved over time, adapting to changing circumstances and pressures.
It makes you wonder how Nigerians themselves viewed this system. Did they see it as a form of collaboration resistance or something in between?
That's a fascinating question, and one that historians continue to explore. There were certainly instances of collaboration, with local rulers seeing benefits in working with the British. But there were also instances of resistance, both overt and subtle.
I can imagine people finding ways to work within the system, while also trying to preserve their own interests and autonomy.
Exactly. It was a complex dance navigating the realities of colonial rule, while trying to maintain a sense of agency.
And amidst all of this, the British were also busy establishing a Western-style administrative system, right?
Yes. They introduced new institutions, laws, and practices, often modeled after the British system.
And one of the key aspects of this new system was the development of a merit-based civil service, right?
That's right. The idea was to create a professional bureaucracy, staffed by individuals selected based on qualifications and competence, rather than through patronage or political connections.
So in theory, it sounds like a fair and efficient system. But how did it play out in practice? Did it truly level the playing field?
That's a great question. And the answer, as with many things in history, is nuanced. While the merit-based system did create opportunities for some Nigerians to rise through the ranks, it also faced challenges.
What kinds of challenges?
Well, access to education was limited for many Nigerians, particularly those from rural areas or certain ethnic groups.
Right.
This meant that those who were already privileged were more likely to benefit from the new system.
So while it might have been a step towards meritocracy, it didn't completely erase existing inequalities.
Precisely. And it's also worth considering the cultural context. Traditional notions of authority and hierarchy sometimes clashed with the impersonal nature of a bureaucratic system.
It's a reminder that even when systems are designed with good intentions, their implementation can be messy and unpredictable.
Absolutely. And alongside the civil service, the British also implemented another key principle: the separation of public funds from the ruler.
Now, this sounds like an important step towards transparency and accountability. Explain a little more about how this worked.
Well, in pre-colonial systems, rulers often had direct control over state resources. But the British sought to establish a clear distinction between personal wealth and public finances.
So the idea was to prevent corruption and ensure that funds were used for the benefit of the people, not just for the enrichment of those in power.
Exactly. And this principle, while not always perfectly implemented, did lay the groundwork for a more transparent and accountable system of governance.
It's interesting to think about how these seemingly abstract principles had real-world consequences, shaping the way Nigeria was governed and the distribution of resources.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that these changes weren't always welcomed with open arms. Some traditional rulers saw it as an erosion of their authority and a threat to their traditional ways of life.
It's understandable that there would be pushback. Change, even if it's for the better, can be disruptive and unsettling.
And alongside the changes to the administrative system, the British also introduced a new legal framework, one that emphasized the principle of equality under the law.
Now, that sounds like a positive development. Was this principle truly upheld in practice?
That's a complex question. While the British legal system did introduce some notions of equality, it also operated within the context of colonial power dynamics.
So in reality, were all Nigerians truly treated equally under the law?
Unfortunately, no. There were instances of discrimination, both within the legal system itself and in the way laws were enforced.
So the ideal of equality clashed with the realities of colonial rule.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that the British legal system often coexisted with traditional legal systems, creating a complex and sometimes contradictory legal landscape.
It sounds like a recipe for confusion and potential injustice.
And it's something that post-independence Nigeria has had to grapple with: how to create a truly just and equitable legal system that reflects the diverse needs and perspectives of its people.
It's a reminder that the legacy of colonialism is something that continues to shape Nigeria today, both in positive and negative ways.
Absolutely. And as we approach the moment of independence, it's important to remember that the transition wasn't a clean break. The systems and structures put in place during the colonial period continue to influence the newly independent nation.
It's like a ship changing course. The momentum of the past continues to influence its trajectory, even as it sets sail in a new direction.
A perfect analogy. And as we'll see, those legacies played a significant role in shaping the challenges and opportunities that Nigeria faced in the post-independence era.
Okay, I'm already eager to hear more about this next chapter. But before we move on, I think we need to take a short break. Our listeners need a moment to digest all this incredible information.
Sounds good. We'll be back soon to explore the birth of a new nation and the complexities of post-colonial Nigeria.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were discussing the complex legacy of British colonial rule in Nigeria and the systems they put in place.
And those systems, as you'll see, played a crucial role in shaping the transition to independence and the challenges that Nigeria faced as a new nation.
So let's talk about that pivotal moment, October 1st, 1960. Nigeria gains independence, and Prime Minister Tafawa Balewa delivers a historic speech, acknowledging the British in his address.
It's a powerful moment filled with both hope and uncertainty. The legacy of colonialism is intertwined with the aspirations of a newly independent nation.
It's like a coming-of-age story, right? Yep. Nigeria stepping onto the world stage, ready to chart its own course, but carrying with it the baggage of its past.
Exactly. And that baggage includes both the benefits and drawbacks of British rule. We've talked about the administrative systems, the legal framework, the economic structures. All of these elements shaped the landscape that Nigeria inherited.
And one of the key challenges that emerged almost immediately was the question of national unity.
Remember, Nigeria was and still is an incredibly diverse nation, with over 250 ethnic groups, multiple religions, and a variety of languages. Holding this diverse tapestry together was a monumental task.
Especially after decades of colonial rule, which often exacerbated those divisions through policies like indirect rule. with sometimes pitted groups against each other.
Right. The British often exploited those divisions to maintain control. So building a sense of national unity, a shared identity that transcended those differences, became crucial for the new nation's success.
It's like trying to assemble a puzzle where the pieces don't quite fit together. How do you create a cohesive whole from such a diverse array of elements?
It was a challenge that required a delicate balancing act. The new leaders had to find ways to accommodate those differences, while also fostering a sense of common purpose.
And alongside the challenge of unity, there was also the task of building a stable and functional democracy.
Remember, the experience of self-governance had been limited during the colonial period, so creating democratic institutions that were responsive to the needs of the people was a huge undertaking.
It's like learning to ride a bike without training wheels. There were bound to be some wobbles along the way.
And there were. Nigeria faced a series of political crises, coups, and counter-coups in the decade following independence. It was a turbulent period marked by both progress and setbacks.
It's a reminder that building a democracy is an ongoing process, not a one-time event. It requires constant vigilance, adaptation, and a commitment to the principles of democratic governance.
Absolutely. And it's important to remember that these challenges weren't unique to Nigeria. Many newly independent nations struggled to forge a path forward, grappling with the legacies of colonialism and the complexities of self-rule.
It's a reminder that history is full of echoes, with patterns repeating across time and continents.
Exactly. And as we look back on this period of Nigeria's history, it's clear that the transition to independence was just the beginning of a long and complex journey.
The journey that continues to this day, with Nigeria facing ongoing challenges related to governance development and social justice.
And it's a journey that's filled with both triumphs and setbacks, moments of progress and periods of turmoil. But it's also a story of resilience, creativity, and the enduring spirit of the Nigerian people.
It's a reminder that history is never truly over. It shapes our present and influences the choices we make for the future.
And as we conclude our exploration of this chapter in Nigeria's history, we hope you've gained a deeper appreciation for the complexities of this nation's past and the enduring challenges it continues to face.
And for you listening, we encourage you to continue exploring this rich and multifaceted history. There's always more to learn, more perspectives to consider, and more stories to uncover.
And who knows, maybe you'll be inspired to delve even deeper into some of the topics we've discussed today.
Because understanding our history is not just about looking back. It's about equipping ourselves to navigate the present and shape a better future.
And with that, we'll leave you to ponder the lessons of Nigeria's past and the possibilities that lie ahead.
Until next time, thank you for listening to Understanding Our History.